Hello, I'm Nancy Perlman, here in the southern part of Turkey on the Mediterranean Sea. On this edition of ECONEWS, we visit ancient 2,000-year-old ruins of the Greek and Roman period and even earlier cultures. Along the coast are modern beach resorts. We hike in the forested mountains and see the nomadic lifestyle of the local people. Stay with us for an exciting adventure along the Lycian Way. I'm in the Temessos National Park at 3,000 feet in the Taurus Mountains, looking at ruins from the Pisidian people that date back over 3,000 years, as well as ruins from the Greek and Roman period.
The ruins standing right behind me belong to the temple of Hadrian and Artemis, a temple dedicated to two gods, or rather one emperor god and one goddess. The doorway that you can see is actually only the entrance into the temple, and the temple unfortunately hasn't survived to our day. Hadrian was a Roman emperor who was very strong, and the Roman Empire lived its golden age during Hadrian's time. And Hadrian traveled through these areas, and these areas, Anatolia in general, Pisidia, Lycia, all these regions were very much proud of receiving Hadrian, and they dedicated temples to him. But at the same time, Artemis, a mother goddess, a local mother goddess who in the Greek period turned into Artemis, was also very much worshipped. And so right here behind me was this beautiful temple dedicated to a Roman emperor and a local goddess.
We're in the ancient theater, and it seems as though it can seat up to 8,000 people, yet the city had 80,000?
Yes, that's our calculation. Although the city hasn't had scientific research and scientific excavations held yet, there is a rule in ancient Roman history and ancient Roman architecture that you should build a theater that can hold up to 10% of your city. So when you find a theater pretty much intact, as we can see right here, you multiply it by 10 and you reach the population of the city.
It's amazing. We're here at the higher level, and yet I see some tourists way over on the other side, and I can practically hear every word they're saying. The acoustics are incredible.
The acoustics are very good because of the location of the theatre. It faces the north, and you can actually see Mount Solimus right in front of it. That creates a beautiful wall, and you can feel the draft coming from each side of this opening on each side of the theatre. That helps with the acoustics as well. So this is a natural theatre in a way. It has the natural acoustics. However, in antiquity, the acoustics would have been even better with the complete walls around it and the scene building right behind us.
And what we're looking at is also a sacred mountain.
Indeed it is. It's Mount Solimus. And this is where the city got its name from, the local indigenous name Solimus, and the mountain was one of their gods. And when they actually practiced the converted Greek religion, they dedicated a name to Zeus. They called their own Zeus, Zeus Solimus.
Yet the theater is not as we think of it today for entertainment, for plays. It was a place of meeting, politics, religious ceremonies.
Indeed it was. Theatres, when we look at them from today's point of view, they seem to be just a place of entertainment, but no. These are public gathering spaces. These are places where especially religious ceremonies were held for the whole city. And they were held over and over again so that many people, not only the 10% of the city, but many people were able to come and see it. And also public gatherings and public meetings that interested the public were also held here.
We've been hiking practically an hour from the lower walls of the city to the upper walls. This seems like it's at the top of the city.
This is almost the very top of this mountain. We're at almost 4,000 feet elevation right here. And yeah, this is one of the highest points of the known Termessos.
I'm amazed at how they even got all this stone here. The quarry is on the other side of the canyon.
Yeah, the quarry that we know of is on the other side of the canyon, but there may have been other quarries as well. But yeah, they did do a lot of work here, a lot of stonework.
We're obviously standing on the stone. We see tourists climbing all around. It doesn't seem to be doing too much damage.
Well, they've been around for over 2,000 years. Yes, each and every step, each and every fingerprint does hurt the stones. You can see a lot of lichen growing on them as well. There is natural destruction going on and human destruction, but we're trying to keep it as safe as possible.
As we came up the hillside, we saw different ruins. We saw the cisterns, the water system. We saw the gymnasium, which wasn't just a place of physical activity, but it was really a school.
Yeah, gymnasiums in antiquity were schools, literally schools, which also had physical activity and sports within them. But gymnasiums are what the Greeks and the Romans called their schools. So yeah, we saw a gymnasium with a bath structure attached to it, and coming all the way up, we saw some colonnaded streets in a ruined state, actually. Some unidentified buildings, honestly signed up as such. And yeah, on our way we saw some other city walls as well.
Somebody must have counted the buildings. There's some identified, some not.
There are hundreds. As I said, there hasn't been a scientific research on this city as a complete city as yet, so we don't know the exact number.
What a great project for an archaeologist like yourself.
Hope so one day.
This has been really fascinating to see how people lived in this area thousands of years ago. And it's stunning, the light, the sun, really beautiful. The weather, how is it during the year?
Well, as I said, we're at 4,000 feet elevation, so it can get very chilly here in the winter, very harsh winds, and you can even get some snowflakes now and again. But in the summer, this is the place to be in, because down below in the city of Antalya on the Mediterranean coast, it gets very, very hot. So we're very happy to be here in the summer season.
And as we got to the main entrance, we saw some of the fields. So the ancient people had to do a lot of trekking up and down the mountains. And then if we really took a look over the hillside, we can see the modern city of Antalya.
Indeed you can. But for the people of the mountains, still today, people living in the mountains have absolutely no problem doing that trip every day or every other day. It's just a daily chore they have to do.
It's really lovely that it's in a beautiful oak forest with some other trees. What are they?
Well, here we have lots of bushes that belong to this very region. We call them maki, which include a great variety of bushes. We have wildflowers, also endemic to this region. Many wildflowers, especially in the springtime. It's beautiful to come over here. And also we have red pine trees surrounding the area of Termessos and various types of ivies as well.
And the geology? This is an area that actually might have some earthquakes, but not the way we experience them in Southern California, not big ones, little tremors.
Exactly. This area is pretty safe in that respect. Yes, there are earthquakes and very frequent earthquakes going on here, but generally they're small, so they're good to let out the energy of those fault lines. They're small, so you don't feel them. They affect the stones, yes they do, but they don't affect the life that much.
And the stone is basically limestone?
It's karstic limestone mainly, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Here we are at the foots of ancient Kitanaura, a newly discovered ancient Pisidian city. We are actually at the very border of the ancient region of Pisidia and Lycia. And Kitanaura is a city that shows characteristics of both regions, with the very typical sarcophagi of Lycia and the very typical symbol of Pisidia, the shield and the lance. From where we are, you can actually see a part of the city walls which have an almost 4 feet thickness and an almost 15 feet height. They are pretty well preserved, only partially though. When we go up, we are going to be able to see the Roman period mausoleum and the Roman period baths. There are actually many more structures there, but excavation hasn't yet taken place here. In 2004 and 2005, and then a second term, 2006-2007, there were scientific researches, but no actual excavation done here yet. The discovery of Kitanaura was rather recent. Or I should word it better maybe, the identification of these ruins was rather recent, because the local people who live in the small town, the small village of Saraycık, already knew that these ruins existed. Therefore the archaeologists knew that they existed. But there wasn't an inscription to tell us what the name of the city was. In 1993, in the city of Patara on the Lycian coast, a Miliarium Lyciae, which is a milestone, was discovered, and on that milestone you had various names of cities written with distances of those cities to the capital of Patara, and that is how this city was identified. These ruins were identified as Kitanaura. This city is thought to have been founded in the 3rd century BC in the Hellenistic period and survived uninterruptedly and maybe even grew in the Roman and the Byzantine era. We have churches, we have ruins of churches here. However, as time went on and as the Eastern Roman Empire, that we know as the Byzantine Empire, started to shrink, so did its cities. And today, the city of Kitanaura still survives under the Turkish Republic as the little village of Saraycık. There is actually quite a lot for archaeologists to work on. There are inscriptions scattered around this beautiful pine forest. They have all been deciphered, but not published necessarily. On a block of stone standing right next to this beautiful mausoleum is an inscription written in ancient Greek. And here we are standing right in front of this beautiful monumental tomb from the Pisidian city of Kitanaura. This tomb dates back to the Roman period, 2nd century AD, but it's a very Pisidian tradition to have a tomb built in the name of a local hero. We don't know his name, but we know that he did something heroic because of these beautiful relief sculptures that you can see on those beautifully cut stones. This dates to the 2nd century AD, and it's a very, very local tradition. It's in ruins today because when things aren't maintained, when ancient cities do not continue their lives, but they shrink into tiny little villages, these big buildings lose their importance in time, and they slowly fall apart because of trees growing through them, because of small earthquakes, and that's why they're in ruins today. But this still is a very well preserved structure.
In the village of Chirala, we can walk along the beach and discover medieval walls. But behind them are the ancient ruins of Olympus, dating back over 2,000 years.
Here we are in the ancient city of Olympus, on the beach right now. We will shortly move on towards the inner part of the city. We're at the harbor at the moment, and behind me you can see some medieval city walls. These belong to the Genovese. After the Arabic invasions that took place in the 8th and 9th century AD, the Byzantine Empire, or better to say the Eastern Roman Empire, started to collapse, and various forces took over the non-controlled areas, such as this very beach, Olympus. These city walls belonged to the Genovese people who had come all the way from Italy and taken over various portions of Byzantine land. This beach today is used by many tourists who come and spend a wonderful day in this beautiful Mediterranean Sea, but at the same time they are able to enjoy ancient ruins inside the city of Olympus, which is a jungle-like, beautiful, untouched ancient city. From the year 2000 onwards, scientific excavations have been going on, but there is still a lot to discover in this beautiful place. This sign explains to us what these three beautiful sarcophagi are all about. These are the harbour tombs, standing right at the very entrance of the harbour of Olympus, which was actually on the river. On one of these sarcophagi is a beautiful poem explaining the life of a captain who lived here in Olympus and who probably was one of the famous captains of the region of Lycia. And here is the poem, standing right here on the sign. The ship is anchored at its last harbour, never more to depart, for no aid is now forthcoming from either wind or sunlight. Captain Evdemos, taking leave of the light-bearing dawn, was buried there, and his ship, with its lifespan short as a day, like a broken wave. Behind me is another sarcophagus that belongs to one other rich person that lived here in Olympus. We are in the vicinity of the sarcophagus that belongs to Marcus Aurelius, who is not the Marcus Aurelius we know of, not the Roman emperor, but a local Lyciarch, one of the local governors of the Lycian Union. So the person who owned this very sarcophagus, Antimachos, must have been a high-class person. This sarcophagus is very special because even in the late 2nd century AD, deep into the Roman period, we still see the local Lycian architecture on it, and that for us is very significant, showing how these Lycian people kept their own features, their own culture, their own architecture all the way throughout the ancient Greek and the ancient Roman periods. We see the very typical saddle-type lids for these beautiful stone sarcophagi, and on each side of the sarcophagus we see the door shapes, which were also very typical of these Lycian tombs. These Lycian tombs copied the shape of their houses, of their own houses that were made out of wood, that we can still see today in various parts of the Taurus Mountains, still used as depots, storehouses, or even beehives. The architecture continues from the 5th century BC all the way into the Roman period and all the way to our present day.
It's difficult sometimes to tell what the building was used for, whether or not it was a home, a religious structure, a public office.
Yes, there is actually a difficulty for archaeologists working in such places where the ruins aren't perfectly preserved. This building is obviously a good quality building. It's got 2 floors and it's got high quality mosaics inside. They are not in very good condition, but you can see that the workmanship was quite high. The first thought after the excavations, after the initial excavations here at this location in 1992, the initial thought was that it may have been used as a bath structure. That was what it looked like.
Not a home.
Not a home.
Or a public office building.
At first they thought it wasn't a home, but as time went by and no feature that showed that it would have been a bath structure was discovered, and they discovered some carvings on the walls, it turns out that it actually may have been used by the bishop. In the 5th and 6th centuries AD, Olympus became a bishopric, and it was a very popular and quite strong Christian city.
It might have had some religious elements then in terms of even a place to pray.
Maybe that, or more than likely it was the residence of the very Bishop of Olympus himself. Behind me are some moving leaves and some people working. There is cleaning and excavations going on right here where we are. We're standing in front of the gate of a temple that is thought to have been dedicated to Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor of the 2nd century AD. The assumption is due to an inscription that was found in front of the entrance gate. The inscription mentions Marcus Aurelius, and more than likely this was a temple dedicated to him. It is also likely that this temple was never finished back in the day in the 2nd century AD, because some of the decorative features were left unfinished. And today, to the right and left of it, there are later walls dating to the 5th, 6th and 7th centuries AD, and these walls are assumed to have belonged to a monastery that was in connection with the grand church standing right beside the temple of Marcus Aurelius. The excavations have been going on since the year 2000. They're being held by the Eskişehir Anadolu University in the northern part of Turkey. There are archaeologists from the university, from various other universities, and the main work, the bulk of the work, is also, of course, as always, being done by the local people, the workmen.
As we travel along the highway from Finike to Arakonda, we stop and look up at the cliffs and find rock-cut tombs from the Lycian period dating back 2,500 years. The Lycian city of Arakonda was active for over 10 centuries, from the 5th century BCE to the 5th century AD. Archaeologists are still doing excavations.
For a visitor coming to an ancient city, some of the buildings are easy to identify, such as a theater, a bath, maybe a monument. But these kind of buildings, where you see only the walls, are not easy to identify. These can be identified either by the archaeologists or by excavating again by archaeologists. Where I'm sitting is actually the wall of a villa of a wealthy person from Arakonda who lived around the 4th century AD. Just behind me are some of the rooms and the open balconies and courtyards of the house, which were excavated by the archaeologists, and according to the pottery that were found in these houses, we can date them easily to the 4th century AD. Behind me we see one of the biggest baths in Lycia. Most people think that the ancient baths are filled with water. They were not filled with water. Some of them may have a piscine outside, but baths usually contained 3 sections. Basically, frigidarium, tepidarium and caldarium, the cold, the warm and the hot section. And usually, like in this bath, just outside the bath there would be a palestra, a sports arena, and changing rooms for the people. So people would first enter to the frigidarium, the cold section, which we still use the word frigider, and then according to their desire they could have gone to the warm and hot section. And how would they adjust the temperature in these? Of course, the cold section was not air conditioned, it was not heated, but the thick walls and the barrel vaulted roofs of the Roman period provided them perfect insulation inside. So in a hot summer day when you get inside, it would really feel cold. And the furnace of the bath would be just next to the hot section. So the hottest water vapor and hot air would first come into the hot section, circulate in the hot section, and then pass to the warm section. So these two rooms would slightly have different temperatures, and the Turkish bath, which is worldwide famous today, is an exact continuation of the ancient bath technique. Of course, we don't have baths as big as the baths that they built in the Roman period, but still the same idea, the same technique continues.
I've had a fantastic visit here on the Lycian Way in the southern part of Turkey. The hiking in the old-growth cedar and pine forests, the boat trips on the Mediterranean Sea, and the 4x4 drives in the Taurus Mountains have been wonderful. It has been great getting close to the roots of Western civilization at the ancient ruins. The friendly Turkish hospitality and delicious food in this modern country adds to the fun adventures. On behalf of my nonprofit organization, Educational Communications and ECONEWS, I'm Nancy Perlman, wishing you a natural, unspoiled environment.
Say